How's it going, Renegades? Coach Pat here, and today we're going to take a look at Chloe and what she looks like at race pace. So she's at about a 30-32 here as she builds to full speed. Things I like, her hands are nice and horizontal. She's smooth. She got nice quick hands away. She got good posture, good solid brace. She's getting a lot of power out of her legs. Areas that she can improve upon, and many of us can improve upon, is just being a little more focused and attentive to what's going on at the front end and at the back end. So if we take a look, let's watch at quarter speed. Let's watch her finishes here. So she's going to build to speed over the first few strokes. After about 3 strokes, we're going to take a look, and I'm going to highlight one thing. So whenever you're rowing, especially at race pace and full pressure, if you want to get every ounce of energy that you're putting out into that handle and into actually moving your boat towards the finish line, we want to make sure you're working from a solid platform and really finishing that stroke off and squeezing that finish off with that upper body and getting as much speed as possible out of that last bit of the stroke. Just to move that boat faster and get more out of it. So if we're actually able to pause it here and we take it back, I want you guys to take a look at her connection to the footboard. So her feet as she drives and then comes into the finish. Right now she's about halfway through her drive. She's pushing through her full foot, which is awesome. She's engaging every muscle in her leg and her body more or less. And right as she extends her legs, her knees are about down, she starts to break her elbows, her body is swung open at this point. She's starting to come into the finish at this point. That's where we essentially consider the beginning of the finish. Her toes start to come off the footboard and she kind of falls backwards and loses connection to the footboard. She's no longer pushing through that full foot. So right here she's pushing through her full foot, full foot, full foot. But right about this point, watch her toes, the tips of her toes start to move right there. So the tips of her toes have just come off footboards, and she still has a good foot or so length to pull that handle to her body and finish that stroke off and really send the boat. So from this point back to the finish, she's not really moving the boat as efficiently, as powerfully as she could. She's no longer really connected to the machine or to the boat, and she's sort of lost her control. So she wants to be in full control at all times, and when I say control, I mean you should be able to stop at any point in time and be in a strong position. If those straps weren't over her toes right at this point, she would essentially not be able to stay up, and when she gets all the way back here to the finish, so her toes come up here, right as the handle comes into the body, if those straps weren't there, she'd fall backwards. And that's why the straps are there, right? So we don't fall backwards. But at the same time, we don't want to rely on those straps. We want to be continually pushing through our full foot and creating this stable platform. So at this point, we want our legs fully engaged, our toes pointed, our belly firm, our chest nice and big and broad, so that we can carry that power all the way through, and even in that last bit of the finish, finish in a strong position and get as much as we can out of it. So if we watch at full speed here, that's what I'm going to ask her to focus on through the finish, is just being a little more connected to the footboards, practicing some full pressure and maybe not at full race rating, but maybe full pressure at some lower ratings, just rowing feet out and getting that sensation of being connected to the footboards even as the handle comes to touch the body. So having that strong finish and that strong send. And that's what we're going to do with our push-ups, our recline rows, developing our upper body strength in our core. Just get more power through the back end there, especially at race pace and full speed. More bang for our buck. So that's one area to work on, is that finish. Next area is going to be the catch. So if we get rid of this circle, let's watch the front end and what happens between her hips and her hands. What we talked about in her steady state rowing video is setting that body angle earlier so that by half slide, her body is prepared, her arms are prepared, and she can just focus on timing the catch with her hips and her hands. So once she gets up to full speed here, I'm going to draw a couple of dots over her hips and her hands. We're going to measure the distance between her hips and her hands at half slide and then at the catch, and we'll see how they've changed. And more importantly, we'll see what happens right at the catch to that distance. So right about here, half slide, we have her hips and her hands. And if we draw a line between the two, there's our distance between the two. Ideally, from this point forward, as she comes into the catch, we want those 2 points to stay connected as if by a string or a rod. So that distance should not change. But she continues to change or sort of go for more reach and get more length. So by the time she gets to the catch, you'll see her seat comes to a stop right here, and for 2 more frames, her hands and her shoulders and her body continue to move forward. And if that's happening, that's all of her weight going into the stern of the boat and pushing the boat backwards, essentially checking the boat and slowing it down. So that's not something we want to do. We want the boat to be going in the other direction. So whenever her seat comes to a stop, say right here, that should be her catch, and her hips, hands, and shoulders should all be changing direction at this point in time, rather than seeing her hands and shoulders continue forward. So if we go to this point where she finally she does change direction and her hips and hands change direction right here, that's essentially her catch. And if we put circles around her hips and her hands, which are off the screen, can't really see right now, but it'll illustrate the point, and we were to draw a line between her hips and her hands here, you'll notice that that line is longer. So she's essentially reached for more as she came to the catch. And that can work if everything's connected. However, let's watch at quarter speed. We see that her seat comes to a stop. She puts all of the weight on her feet, and her mass, her center of gravity, continues to travel forward. And that's just going to be a lot of check in the boat that will essentially be working against her. So we want her to focus on being prepared by half slide. So if she wants to have that forward body angle where she is at the catch currently, she needs to set that angle by half slide, and she needs to brace and get her arms ready by half slide so that as she comes into the catch, she can focus on that catch timing and not let any check occur or let those hips or hands go any further than they need to. So let's clear all. Let's watch it at full speed, and then we can hopefully see her make some improvements over the next few weeks. All right, guys, if you have any questions, let me know. Have a great week training, and we'll talk to you soon.